Star Wars Outlaws é um jogo que tá deixando a galera um pouco dividida, né? Mas quem gosta de Star Wars, quem tá afim de viver mais das aventuras dentro do mundo de Star Wars, inclusive já pode dar uma olhada lá na nuvem, Lepitecos, porque tá rolando promoções também de Star Wars. Tem preços absurdamente baixos, como Star Wars Rebel Assault 1 e 2, tá saindo por 5,17 os dois juntos. O Star Wars Battlefront 5,17 também, Lepitecos. Tem alguma coisa com esse número.
Preços.
Tem alguma coisa
Excelentes preços.
Né? Vai falar mais que eu te interrompi 2 vezes?
Me interrompeu 2 vezes. Excelentes preços, mas assim, vamos falar do Outlaws hoje, porque eu acho que tem coisas acontecendo e eu quero saber logo, Ariel. Tô preocupado.
A gente tá vendo as reações da galera nesse vídeo aqui, parecem meio mais ou menos, né? Então vamos dar uma olhada, porque é o primeiro, é o Hygiene First do Star Wars Outlaws, que diz, é o primeiro Star Wars de mundo aberto. E a galera nos comentários falando, vocês esqueceram desse, daquele. Então vamos ver qual é a pegada desse vídeo aqui. Mas antes você está no... Lembrando vocês que os links da nuvem estão aqui na descrição, para vocês poderem adquirir não somente os jogos de Star Wars, mas qualquer outro jogo. E as melhores condições de pagamento são com a nuvem também. Vamos lá então para essa reação do Hygiene First. Tá com legenda em português para vocês, pode contar.
3, 2, 1, vai.
Making games is really tough. Making open world games is really, really tough. And making Star Wars open world games is the next level of difficulty.
Julian Garrity, creative director at Massive Entertainment, is up for a challenge. For the first time ever, we're getting a fully open-world Star Wars video game. It's been a long time coming, but after back-to-back successes with both The Division and The Division 2, Garrity was in the mood to take a risk.
This may be just my approach, but even if it's scary, you've got to do it. You've got to lean into it. What's the downside to pitching a Star Wars game at Lucasfilm Games in George Lucas's old office? I mean, what's the downside to that? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you still have that experience.
Fast forward several years after that meeting, and Massive Entertainment is less than 2 months away from releasing Star Wars Outlaws, a fully realised version of the original pitch described in that office. An open world of dual ambitions, maintain the cinematic legacy of the films, and create immersive scoundrel gameplay that grants you the freedom of the galaxy.
I think it's taken this long to get an open world Star Wars game because of how, excuse the pun, massive it is to build a game like this. There are only so many studios in the world who build games of this scale. The door is then open for Massive to come to us and say, this is what we're interested in doing. This is the type of game design and gameplay we want. This is what we're thinking about in terms of an archetype. Where does that fit?
It's the outlaw player fantasy and it's open world. Those were the 2 main pillars that we pitched. Why open world? Because the outlaw fantasy really needs that to live and breathe.
It's a combination of, I think, our DNA as a studio, our background, when we think, okay, what do we have a lot of experience doing? What do we think we're good at? And this fantasy, the scoundrel in Star Wars, begs for freedom.
Massive was fully confident in its abilities to create engaging open worlds. The Division offered a bullet-filled action playground, while last year's Avatar Frontiers of Pandora displayed an ability to work well within a Disney license by building a near-unmatched visual paradise. But Star Wars was the new challenge that this team yearned for. Of course, deciding what kind of experience would live inside a Star Wars open world was the first thing that had to be decided.
We took a step back, of course, and thought, okay, Star Wars open world, what an opportunity. What does that naturally want to be? And it wants to be the full scale from the very small to the very big, meaning sitting inside a cantina, playing sabak, being able to walk through the street, jump on your speeder, drive across the planet's surface, park literally your bike in your own ship, take off into space seamlessly.
That vision of full scale helped secure a green light from Star Wars custodians, but getting Lucasfilm's blessing was just the key in the ignition. Translating the cinematic spectacle of the original Star Wars movie trilogy into an open world, set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, 2 of the most iconic films of all time, was the actual challenge. One that Massive set out to address in every aspect of Outlaws, from the way it looks and sounds to the type of action-adventure gameplay it supplies.
Fire up the hyperdrive.
The sort of cinematic ambition that we had was in presentation. So that doesn't mean cinematics necessarily. What I care the most about is the interactive part, right? What
O jogo parece ter evoluído graficamente.
take a lot of inspiration from
Eu realmente
the
tô
original
achando muito
trilogy,
bom.
but with today's technology.
Tô tentando ver
very
qual é o
similar
grande
to what
problema.
Rogue One did. What its aim was to do
Não, acho que a
was
galera
to
pegou mais no
replicate
título
a lot
mesmo
of
de primeiro
the sort of
jogo de mundo
filmic
aberto
effects of
de
those
Star Wars.
lenses
Mas
of the
eu também realmente
1970s.
fiquei preocupado com
you'll
aquele
see
último,
barrel
sem ser
distortion
o
on
anterior.
the
Ah, eu
sides,
também.
vignetting, film grain,
penúltimo.
chromatic aberration, and of course all wrapped up in
Ah, o que você falou da IA.
ultra-widescreen presentation.
Esse daí eu tinha curtido.
It's a key point for open world games at large, but I think very much for Star Wars as well. And not
Pior que não é
always
mundo aberto, né?
it
Galáxia
needs to
aberta.
be grand, but it needs to be conscious. The scale of Tatooine needs and should and does in our game feel very different. It breeds, open sand dunes, long sight lines. You see, it's easy to pick up any little anomaly on the horizon, and it might be an opportunity for you compared to the dense streets of Kijimi.
Scale is something written into the very DNA of Star Wars, whether seen on the big or small screen. Greg Fraser, Rogue One's director of photography, recently told IGN that
if you watch any Star Wars film, that's what it's all about. It's, knowing how big a human is going into this massive Millennium Falcon. You know how big the Millennium Falcon is going to this massive Death Star. It's scale upon scale upon scale.
it's a philosophy Garrity and the team at Massive took into Outlaws when crafting the introduction to its open world.
One of our intentions was, for the beginning of the game, to make it feel very small and then bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So, beginning of the game, you start off in one room and it's claustrophobic and it's meant to make you feel a little bit trapped. You open up and it's city streets, but it's contained. And then some narrative stuff and you steal a ship and you explode into the galaxy and all of a sudden you crash land on this planet, which is wide open world. That sort of sense of everything growing for you, and not just the scale of the galaxy, but the scale of the possibilities for you as a character, as a rookie outlaw.
K-Vess, the underworld's favorite new scoundrel.
Outlaws campaign tells the tale
pulinho,
of
pulinho.
K-Vess, a young scoundrel looking to build a team from across the stars in order to pull off one big space heist and remove the death mark placed on her by the Zerek Besh crime syndicate. It's the basis of a story that evokes many other adventures from across both games and film.
I love Mass Effect 2. It was is one of my favorite games. I think there were so many influences, everything from Ocean's 11, Ocean's 8
Caraca.
to Star Wars itself, the previous films. Like, that heist feeling was always kind of in the fabric, to just tonally the films with Kurosawa, those original influences to George Lucas.
Knowing what sort of story you want to tell is one thing.
Caramba, Kurosawa
Telling
foi
an
influência pro
engaging
George
story
Lucas.
in an open world setting is another
louco.
task
Sabia não?
altogether, and
Não.
one that Kavari
Ficou
is well
famoso.
aware of, having
Sempre
written for Far Cry
super
4,
conhecido.
5 and 6, as well as The Division.
It's one of the things you always have to keep in
Kurosawa,
mind
alguns
is
filmes de
how are we
faroeste.
gonna weave a narrative
A faroeste
in
dá
an
pra
open
perceber
world
bastante.
together,
Até
so
no
that we're
Mandalorian
telling the
também tem muita
story, but
coisa.
also giving you the freedom to sort of
Não,
go
mano,
wherever
dos
you
classicões.
like. He had a really
Sim, não, acho que o Mandalorian só pegou a vibe, né?
There was Kay's journey. We called them sort
Que
of
tinha nos
lighthouses. There were key points that we knew we want her to hit these, and then that makes her story kind of part of the wider Star Wars narrative. But between those moments, we knew early on that if you got distracted by curiosity, the world had to react to that. It had to expect
Caraca, toda vez que ela
the
pula,
players
o
gonna go
bagulho
off
fica
the beaten
estranho.
path.
The things that lie off the beaten path are built in accordance to something Massive refers to as the 3-second rule, where within a few blinks of an eye you can instantly understand the nature of a location or character and the story behind them.
Before you even put life in them, they need to visually tell a story about what kind of place it is, what's happened in the past, what type of life and events have taken place in them. So they get that lived-in feeling, and that lived-in, relatable, substantial feel, I think is a hallmark of any good open world.
A rede do jogo é bem bonitinha,
Star
né?
Wars
Quase não
aesthetic
tem
has
coisa.
always been rooted in the idea of the used future, where everything from the largest spaceships to the tiniest droids have that instantly recognizable layer of grime. Those small details build up into authentic, cool and bespoke spaces, something Massive has always managed to build into its open worlds. The Division and its sequel are packed full of memorable levels ranging from New York landmarks to Washington DC museums, and that philosophy is being transferred to Outlaws Outlaws' many planets. Its main missions promise to take us to iconic locations such as Imperial bases and Jabba's palace.
We can lean into the virtual tourism aspect of, hey, what is the distance between the moisture farms and Mos Eisley and the cantina? There is a linear roller coaster story golden path, if you will. And around that, of course, there's the open world.
That's the dream I know I had as a kid. That is what I've always wanted from a Star Wars game, is that, you know, when I'm on a journey, when I'm entering into a quest, it might start on foot. It might start navigating a High Republic cruiser that's crashed, but I want to be able to jump into my speeder and blast off, hop into the Trailblazer, take off into space, maybe land in a space station and meet some characters that factor into my quest or journey along the way. And so that sort of connective tissue of planet or moon to space was crucial, because that's kind of the fantasy that I think players are hoping for.
That fantasy and freedom is evidently at the core of Outlaws, and while all 5 planets and moons won't be instantly available to hyperdrive between, Garrity claims it won't be long into Kay's journey until the galaxy opens up.
There's a very structured intro that leads you to crash land on Tashara, which is a moon that we created with Lucasfilm Games. And once you finish the sort of linear narrative on Tashara, the other planets open up. And there it becomes completely non-linear, and you can choose
O mundo
to
parece ser
tackle
muito
those in
bem
any
detalhado.
order you want.
Exploration of these worlds is highly encouraged, with maps that are not, at least initially, flooded with icons and points of interest, because you're seeing these places from a fresh perspective.
Kay as a character hasn't seen the galaxy. So the first time Kay comes to Tashara is the first time you come to Tashara. And it's not an unknown, uncharted place. So you'll have a map of where you can see there's, mountains over there and stuff, but discovery is what gives you more information.
You're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to go to a cantina, and you can eavesdrop, pick up on some conversations that will lead you to another location that reveals a location within the open world that you have to get on your speeder to go and find. There will be a fog of war that you'll be able to clear up, and that's really where your curiosity will open things up even more.
Each of Outlaws' worlds vary in size. Tashara, Massive's newly created moon, is around the same size as the jungle planet of Akiva, but a little smaller than the vast desert of Tatooine.
It was less about how big, but more about how long in terms of traversal. With the speeder, it would be 4 or 5 minutes non-stop, which doesn't sound like a lot, but once you're committed, it's a fairly large amount. You're always going to be distracted. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was one of the games that we were looking at while creating this, you have different zones, so it's 2 or 3 of those together.
And that doesn't even take into account the vast areas of space that surround each planet and serve as entirely different areas of orbital exploration and opportunity. We'll cover that,
do
as
Odyssey
well
como
as
se
the
fosse
Starship
negócio
side of the game
incrível.
in
Não
greater
consigo
depth
gostar,
later on
velho.
in this month's IGN First.
Eu queria.
I said, run.
In terms of mission design, we've seen action ranging from stealth infiltrations, frantic dogfights, high-speed chases, and intense blaster battles, with some quests even evolving to include all these elements at different stages. Star Wars Outlaws is thus perhaps better thought of as a single-player narrative action-adventure in the wrappings of an open world, something more akin to Marvel's Spider-Man than dense RPGs like The Witcher or Ubisoft's recent Assassin's Creed games. Its mixture of popcorn action and blockbuster narrative ambition is a departure from Massive's gear-based experience on The Division. It's a new chapter in the continued evolution of a studio that started life as a real-time strategy developer.
I think if you look at the evolution of open world between Division 1 and Division 2, there's a life, a dynamism, a systemic quality to Division 2 that we didn't have in Division 1. I'm not talking about the presentation, the soft values at all. I'm talking about pure gameplay experience, single player or cooperative. That's was very, very important to us to have as a living, breathing element that engages players while they're playing Outlaws.
It's an evolution of what Massive has been doing in their games for years now, keeping worlds feeling bustling and alive even when set against post-apocalyptic backdrops or in the midst of galactic wars.
We, in both Division games, but especially in the second one, developed what we call living world systems. So same thing here. We have systems that make sure that the world is always alive with movement, traffic, speeders zipping around, the Empire patrolling, the syndicates have.
Isso é bem legal, mas tem uma aplicação diferente quando é jogo single player e um MMO, né?
It's really up to you if you want to engage or not.
Dá pra se fazer algo da hora para o single player.
Life into its open world is its approach to character progression. There's no leveling up or incremental stat boost to drop experience points into. Instead, Kay's ability and equipment are linked to experts, people you'll meet across the galaxy who'll grant you upgrades in exchange for work.
I heard you're the best shot on the planet.
Oh, and you want to be second best.
Basicamente atirador ali de faroeste.
You don't know exactly who they are, what exactly they have to offer you, and how to reach them from the very beginning. So there's this journey of discovery here as well. Intel, clues, okay, I think there's a guy or gal or something that can do good things to my speeder here. Meaning these are really strong incentives for you to move around and journey through the world and expose yourself to other fun things on the way. And once you reach them, there's a character there to interact with and an adventure to go on, because they want instantly just, oh, here you go, right? And then they essentially open up a little regional progression for you where the nature of unlocking those things is also very tangible.
For example, after finding a Jawa by sourcing their location from overheard intel at a cantina, you can complete a mission for them in order to gain a new skill. In this case, it's to venture into a dead Sarlacc to find a pristine tooth from its second mouth, which you can then exchange for a laser turret for Kay's starship, the Trailblazer. It's a smart way of blending gameplay progression with narrative befitting of the Star Wars criminal underbelly.
You can go on a journey with a character such as an expert who is going to teach Kay a new skill and give her a new upgrade, you know, to her blaster.
Simplesmente vai ter que obrigatoriamente fazer side quests.
Mas você não tem como escolher, né? O que você vai evoluir. O jogo vai escolher por você conforme a missão que você encontrou.
Então, é isso. Você vai obrigatoriamente fazer side quests pra ganhar coisas novas ou melhorar suas habilidades. Mas elas têm que ser boas. Se eles não fizerem side quests excelentes, eles estão dando um tiro na água.
Isso é verdade.
I'm gonna finish it. Shame.
Your reputation moving in the positive direction unlocks a lot of things for you. Everything from actual access to territory that they control, where you might have been able to sneak in otherwise, to landing pads in the open world. Discount with traders affiliated with the syndicate. Unique.
Tem uma coisa que me deixa bastante impressionado com o jogo é como o mundo do game parece vivo mesmo. Tem muita coisa acontecendo, muita gente e coisas diferentes.
The reputation system doesn't just sit inside of missions, though.
Eles mostrarem só isso pra gente pensar isso.
Present themselves to boost your relationships among the syndicates.
Mas os vídeos mostram um combate, mostram uma aventura, mostram a nave,
resolvemos ter que ter fé.
May even help you out with the bigger threat looming over the galaxy.
Resolvemos ter que ter fé. Temos que ter que ter fé.
If you've, for whatever reason, ended up wanted and you're being chased by Empire and you cross paths with a syndicate that you have really good reputation with at the moment, they might
Outlaws directly follows the events of the Empire Strikes Back, the Imperial forces at the peak of their powers. In gameplay terms, the Stormtroopers are basically like GTA's police and adopt a similar wanted system. Find yourself in a restricted area or accidentally fire a stray laser bullet at a Stormtrooper and you'll quickly find yourself in hot water. It's by no means a revolutionary system when it comes to open world design, but one that is made all the more exciting thanks to a lick of Imperial black and white paint.
It has a good range of escalation and de-escalation. It's really up to you if you want to try and hide or maybe bribe an Imperial officer that's a bit corrupt in a city somewhere or try to jump to a different space region. But you will feel it, and let's just say there are Death Troopers for a reason.
Hang on!
importante.
Beyond the main missions, expert side missions, and the reputation system at the core of it all, many other snackable activities exist in Outlaws open world. These range from quick contracts such as smuggling and stealing, gambling in Sabak, to playing asteroid-filled arcade shooter games, and betting on Canto Bite's Favia racing. All of these activities bolster your ever-growing supply of credits, which can be used to purchase new customization and gear options for Kay, her pet-like alien companion Nyx, and the Trailblazer. And yet, there's more. Emergent events frequently take place throughout the open world, whether on land or in space.
Every 2-3 minutes there'll be something that's happening, whether it's an ambush or the Empire arresting some civilians or combat with some criminal syndicates, and it's up to you whether you want to engage or not.
So with so much to do in Star Wars Outlaws, how does Massive go about avoiding open world bloat? With a near endless galaxy of opportunity, there's the worry that things may spiral, feature creep sets in, and everything just gets too big. The studio had a clear plan from the start though, leading with variety over size, quality over quantity, if you will.
We don't want things to be just big for big's sake. We need it to be contained, always fun, always proposing different activities.
It's about calibrating size to substance. When you see something that breaks pattern, that stands out for that reason, and you go there and look, there's something there to do, and that repeats.
Tipo, os lugares existem, mas não existem à toa.
The quests, the bespoke kind of content of the game makes use of it, so that it doesn't feel like a separate experience, but it's all one.
Of course, no matter how much there will be to do in Outlaws,
hein?
one thing that can be expected is a healthy helping of nods to the larger Star Wars galaxy. Lando is set to make an appearance, and we've already seen a glimpse of Han Solo and Carbonite, but it sounds like they might just be the tip of the iceberg.
There's Easter eggs, there's characters that you'll meet along the way across the main quests and across, whether it's the experts or, you know, the wider stories you're going to stumble across. August 30th is a really great date. I recommend bookmarking it in your calendar.
August 30 is right around the corner. A short wait for many players for whom an open world game set in a galaxy far, far away has been a long-held dream. I could feel a similar passion for Star Wars coming out of each person I spoke to at Massive, and for them, I can't help but get the sense that that dream is a shared one. Making open world games is tough, and bringing open world to Star Wars may well bring an extra level of difficulty, but for Garrity and the team, it's been a challenge worth taking on.
I'm not as young as I used to be, and I'm getting to that point where I think I can count the number of games I can do till I'm put out to pasture on one hand, and it becomes more and more important to me to choose what I do, because it's really important for me to do quality work with people that I love working with. And Star Wars is definitely bucket lists.
So, where do we go next?
Anywhere we want.
We'll have more exclusive looks at Star Wars Outlaws for you throughout July. And for everything else...
O vídeo é lotado de declarações de amor, né, pra Star Wars aí, do time de desenvolvimento do jogo. Eu acho que isso é muito legal. Pra uma franquia que é muito... movida pela paixão, né? Então, se eles estiverem fazendo um bom trabalho nesse aspecto, vão atender todo mundo, né? Inclusive eles mesmos, né? Que falam que não viam motivo para não pegar esse projeto, de fazer dele uma coisa muito legal, qualidade acima de quantidade. Tudo isso parece uma ótima promessa, né? Todo mundo fica com o pé atrás com a da Ubi, né? Mas eu acho que, como a gente vem falando recentemente, a Ubi parece estar se encontrando de novo, apesar do Avatar que não foi tão bem recebido, mas é um bom jogo. Mas é feito pela própria Massive, né? Então, me preocupa isso, né? O jogo acabou de sair, eles estão lançando conteúdo, eles também estão fazendo Star Wars, é bizarro, né? Ou o estúdio é gigante, ou realmente existe toda uma força ali da Ubisoft, como sempre tem.
Eles cresceram muito, hoje aí estão se tornando, talvez, ao lado das que desenvolvem os Assassin's Creed, né? Da Quebec, da Montreal. Os melhores Assassins eu acho que vêm deles. Posso estar enganado aí, mas eu acho que são esses dois aí. Torna-se aí a trinca ali dos melhores estúdios da Ubi.
Ó, só pra informação, Lê, tem mais de 700 pessoas no estúdio, conforme a informação do site deles.
Gigantesco. Cara, pô, assim, tem um ou outro vídeo ali que a gente fica meio assim e tal, mas no modo geral, parece que será um excelente jogo.
Parece mesmo.
Se não excelente, vai ser um jogo acima da média. Eu chuto excelente porque eu gostei da maioria das coisas que eu vi, mas eu acho que vai ser um jogo nota 85+, assim. O que
é ótimo.
Dica, tá?
É ótimo.
podendo até chegar a 90 a mais, enfim. Tô esperançoso, cara, tô hypadaço. Gosto de tudo que eu vi, gosto dessa abordagem de você jogar com a Han Solo, né? Com um tipo de Han Solo, né? A canalha, a K-Vest ali. E o Nix parece ser aí também um personagem carismático, um sidekick que vai agregar muito no gameplay e na narrativa. Enfim, coisas muito interessantes pra esse jogo aí, cara. Tô esperançoso.
Eu também, cara. Esse vídeo me deixou mais confiante. É muito bom ouvir quem faz o jogo falar dele e você perceber que não são palavras vazias, pelo menos é o que me parece. Eles podem estar acreditando que eles estão fazendo tudo que eles falaram e dar errado? Pode. Mas ao mesmo tempo...
Exato.
Ao mesmo tempo, parece que nós estamos diante de pessoas que sabem dos problemas que o gênero de jogo que eles estão trabalhando sofre, que é o jogo de mundo aberto. E eles estão preparados para isso. A parada de não ter a árvore de habilidades me chamou muita atenção. Porque o caminho que todo mundo está acostumado a fazer é isso. Eles estão indo pro outro. É uma parada que parece mais recompensadora, sabe? Gosto muito dessa ideia e é o que ficou marcado para mim a partir desse vídeo aí.
Eu acho que não é só... Talvez eu não penso como uma parada recompensadora, mas é uma coisa motivadora. Também? De você talvez conhecer coisas que se você não precisasse, você não faria. Do tipo, eu quero ter um blaster novo lá, que eles falaram, um blaster mais poderoso. Ah, então você precisa matar um bicho, e aí você tem que catar o dente desse bicho e trocar por esse blaster. Se de repente fosse só compra, eu farmaria, venderia algumas coisas minhas, pegaria o dinheiro e compraria. Então eles podem entregar uma outra experiência. Claro que não é a primeira vez, né? A gente já vê um monte de jogo que você precisa fazer algo para pegar algo e trocar por algo e tal. Mas você fazer isso o tempo inteiro para ter coisas muito boas sem ter a opção de compra ou de troca de habilidades, essas coisas assim, pra evoluir no game, pode ser algo legal, bem legal.
Muito legal, cara. Tá quase lá, dia 30 de agosto é a data de lançamento do jogo. Estamos a quase um mês e meio aí pra chegada do Star Wars Outlaws. Diga aí o que vocês esperam do jogo, se vocês estão preparados pra embarcar nessa aventura aí, ou se vocês vão esperar pelos reviews, que com certeza nós teremos aqui pra vocês muito em breve, beleza? Um abraço, até o próximo vídeo.
Valeu.